I wake up to the same old fight, chasing shadows in the night. Promises made, but I let them fade. Caught in the cycle, I'm feeling betrayed. Round and round, I'm losing ground. Trying to break free, but I can't see. These negative patterns are haunting me. Nights turn to days, I'm losing my way. Thought I found peace, but it's led me astray. Chasing the high, but it only brings pain. The more I run, the less I gain.
Hey everybody, hey, and welcome to another session of Tired to Say It Again. And as you can see, we are out of the office. I am in the state of Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia, that is, and more specifically on the island of Jekyll. They call it Jekyll Island. Now, initially, we came here a few days ago to celebrate our biannual family reunion. And while being here, got a chance to visit Jekyll Island and learn the history of how Jekyll Island came about, even to the point of it used to be spelled with one L at the end versus the two L's. But nevertheless, it was almost like a dual education. It was a two in one. And I say that because I was here learning about my family history, and we came here because a lot of the Williams were born and raised here, and there's a lot of properties, etc. But at the same time, got a chance to visit Jekyll Island right here in Brunswick and was educated on how that came about. Now listen, today's session is going to be about family history. Now, before going in depth with family history, I want to back up because this weekend is what we call Juneteenth. And I say it like that because anybody that knows me, I don't celebrate holidays, your Christmases and your Halloweens, etc. Because, as you know, they are pagan holidays or man-made. So why wait to one specific day to celebrate? If I'm going to get somebody something, you're going to get it. We're not waiting to that one day. And so on and so forth. But as I say, just do your research. And that's on anything, because you could be doing something that's tradition and you come to find out there's some negative behind it or how it was established. But don't want to get off track. Juneteenth itself, they celebrated it every year on June 19th. And as they say, it has a bigger meaning. Right? They say it's powerful. We talk about freedom, as a group of people, the resiliency of our people, and the long journey that it took towards justice for African Americans or Black Americans. We also knew it as, say, Freedom Day or Emancipation Day, or some may even say Jubilee Day. And we know that slavery ended in 1865, or you might say it was abolished. So the overall, say, Juneteenth, it commemorates the day in 1865 when the enslaved people finally learned that they were free. And I hear that Texas is the first state that actually recognized this many years ago, before the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Abraham Lincoln. So going on about Juneteenth, it's complex, the complex history, but I think most important is the conversations about racial equity and civil rights, because we all want to be treated equally. Just point blank, period. Forget a holiday, but just being treated equally as a human being. And we know years past that wasn't the case. So Biden, he was the one that signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day in 2021. And that's where I was going back to say Texas, they were the first state, I believe, that recognized it as a federal holiday way before Biden signed the papers. So now it's recognized as you would call it a public holiday in all the states. And for me, that was educational because before that time, it was like, where did this holiday come from? But going back, we know the original colors was red, white, and blue. And red, the color red in Juneteenth celebration, those colors, they trace back to the African traditions. Jekyll Island, first I would say, it was really nice going out there. Right? This whole island, it was long in length. The inception, it spans from Native Americans and how they talk about the French and the English colonial. No, they didn't look like us, but what got me was the smarts as far as how they took their money and passed it down to the next generation. How they took their money and they invested it. And a lot of times our people, we don't do that. We spending. But Jekyll Island wound up being basically a billionaire winter retreat. And we got a chance to go on the island. They say it began back in 1886 during the tour. This is what they were telling us. And it was purchased by the elite northern. And
She loves the attention.
they established this exclusive Jekyll Island club. And while we were on the tour, our tour guide, she shared with us that then it was $15 to stay in this place. Otherwise, translation, our time, that was $600 a night to stay on the island.
Yeah.
Membership as part of this club, it was $600 annually. And today, that's basically like $40,000. You know, like how you pay these different, like golf clubs or just a club. But the island's earliest inhabitants, as we already said, were the Native Americans. And what they would do on these islands or this resort, as we say, it was like a hunting club. They would hunt boars. I got a chance to see where they had taken some of the boars and had them put on the wall. I actually saw some live deer, and they would hunt these different animals. You would have to pay for it though. Whatever you kill, you would have to pay for it, and the chef would prepare it for you. But it kind of put me in the mind like when you go fishing, you know, you pay by the pound. You were able to fish there on the island as well as gather shellfish. The island history, they say, you know, they don't get any funding. So buyers going, you pay to park. It's like $10 to park. You go over the bridge, and no matter where you parked on the island, you was covered because you paid for the day or however long you would be staying there. So they make money from parking, they make money from the shops, the restaurants, tours, because that was additional. We took the tour on the trolley. It can range from $20 to $30, but it was just really amazing to see the different activities on this property because basically, as we said, it was a club for the elite. And one of the things that they said, it was inaccessible. In other words, it was difficult for you to be a part unless you had some major money. Not only that, unless you looked a certain way. No secrets. Okay. So a lot of us would not have been able to be a part of this elite group. The island's history was characterized by a few things that I picked up. It took it all the way back. And our tour guide, she was telling us a man by the name of Oglethorpe, he named the island to honor his financier, Sir Joseph Jekyll. So that's how Jekyll Island came about. He rented the land. Major William Horton, who established this profitable outpost to supply like military forts. Another thing I learned was a ship back in the 1800s that there was an illegal slave ship named Wonder. I believe that was the name of it. And it landed on the shores of Jekyll. And that's where they brought over 400 slaves into the U.S. Then you had your Billionaires Club era, as they called it, where we know there was definitely an isolation. And even the tour guide told us some of the workers were separated. So I was surprised to hear them talk about these things, as far as the separation, so on and so forth. But one thing they mentioned as far as the food, now the employees, they say, of course, Black Americans, or as they say African Americans, they was paid 20% less than their white counterparts. Nothing new, right? We've heard that before. But if you worked on the island, on Jekyll Island, you would be paid as a Black American 25% more than, say, the regular people working on the mainland, if that makes sense. So you got paid more if you were on the island. And I can see that because it was a baller club. The elite lived on this island. So going back to what we said, this millionaire era, as you know, it was a group of powerful investors that made this happen. In other words, some of the nation's leading families today. And we know about jpmorgan, yep, jpmorgan, Rockefeller, and Jay-Z talk about that all the time in his movie. And Joseph Pulitzer, that's another family name. And they purchased the island to serve basically as this winter sanctuary. They would come down during the winter time and they would be here on Jekyll Island 90 days or longer. They had different barriers, but they would stay for a few months. And I even heard one got deep where one of the wives, I can't remember which one, she was from the north, and it was too much for her, she said, to live in the south. So she wanted to go back. That's what she did. She went back and lived in the north. So her husband, he would pay her an allowance. Her allowance was $6,000 y'all. It's real. $6,000. That was big. Can you imagine what that is today? I was telling you, memberships for $600 and 40,000 you call in today's time. Well, today's time. So this chick is getting 6,000. I can't even convert what that was as an allowance for today. Oh my gosh. So basically, it was what you call the turn of the century vacation resort. And it was patronized by those Christian leading families, names that I just shared with you. So it was an exclusive membership. And I also found out that it controlled basically an estimated 1/6 of the world's wealth. Back then, they built private cottages. Okay? Even though you hear it called like Jekyll Island Club or Jekyll Island Resort, we got a chance to witness and see the various cottages and they named the cottages. Like we had the Moss Cottage. There were a lot of different cottages. Also during this time, the early 1900s, the Jekyll Island Club, that was the birth of the feds. Yeah, you heard me. The feds, the IRS. Yeah, that's how this came about. I found out that there was a meeting that was held, a secret meeting at the Jekyll Clubhouse, as they say. And that's where they drafted all this legislation for a bank, central bank, and that's how the U.S. Federal Reserve, that whole banking system, how it was formed. Yeah. When I tell you it was very educational for me. And I'm sure some of you that are listening have even more details. But not only was it educational as far as the Williams family history, but seeing this history with these elite family names and how they had those meetings, how they sat down to discuss, plans, how they made their money work for them, how they invested. Now, I don't know all the details. There might be some negatives, but we're going to keep it positive. We're going to keep it positive because we do know there was a time where they was taking properties and so on and so forth. When you've had the toy massacres, the street massacres, etc. But the fact that they've passed some of these things down to the next generation, and if that means as a Black American, we have to do better with what we have and making sure that it's protected, making sure we're having conversations with our children, teaching them the financial literacy and everything that comes with it. Then we have to do that. Hold on to what we have. And if you don't have anything, take small steps so that we can. So in summation, it's all about family, creating legacy, educating our generation for that financial literacy, passing down if there's any property, acreage, setting up those trusts. Hell, if it's just starting small and getting your child a savings account as a toddler, they're starting somewhere because they're going to get interest on it every month. It's never too long to have a bank account, as long as you got a social security number. But hey, again, our topic today, family, history. Hopefully you got something out of my experience here on the island. It's a must see. Pay attention to the history and details that they share with you. And do your own research. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to iHeartRadio, Spotify, and YouTube. Have a good one.